What's going on, and welcome back. I'm back. For those of you that are new here, I come out with a video every Friday, except for last week. I was feeling a little under the weather, so I didn't want to film. I filmed videos before in the past when I wasn't feeling good, and that's not fun. But I'm back, trying to get back on schedule. Can you hear that? Dude, it's windy outside. Is it going to affect the video? Maybe the audio. If you can hear the wind the whole time in the background. Dude, it's ridiculous. I have to change the light. Dude, it's going to be one of those videos. Anyways, have to change the light, dude. See, this is what happens. Take a couple of weeks off. Negative 3 weeks off from making videos, and you forget how everything works. But anyways, so I got asked a couple of questions. What was my favorite game or gaming console of all time, and what was my favorite game of all time? I'm gonna answer one of those questions today. So I was probably like 9 or 10 when I first played the NES. Before, like, I think when I was 5 years old, I played the Atari 2600, maybe. One of my uncles had, and at that age, I didn't have no interest in video games, right? I just wanted to play with toys. Well, by 10, the NES was out, and I played it for the first time, and I became addicted to gaming. That was my first real taste of like video games, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and I never looked back. I loved the NES. I finally got one of my own, and it was the best thing ever. The funny thing is, like, there's a video, I can't remember what it's called, that I put out, how I got my first NES. I'll find it and I'll put it in the description down below so you can check it out. Really interesting story on how I got my NES. Anyways, so at that time, I wasn't thinking about like graphics or anything like that. I didn't know anything about graphics. I just knew that I was playing games and I was having a fun time doing it. It wasn't until the SNES came out, the Super Nintendo, and I would see pictures in magazines about this new console that's coming out from Nintendo, and I'm thinking, oh my god, dude, this looks amazing. These games look absolutely amazing. And then I think it was like a year or so later, I got one for Christmas, and dude, that was the absolute best Christmas I've ever had. I got an SNES, a Super Mario World, and dude, I was loving it. 16-bit graphics. I love the way the games looked. I love the way the games sounded. And then, later on, I ended up getting Street Fighter 2, and then A Link to the Past, Super Castlevania 4. Now I'm getting text messages from my friend. So after the Super Nintendo, I ended up getting a PlayStation, and I'll never forget that day. I'm sitting at home, actually playing the Super Nintendo, when my mom calls me and asks me if I wanted to go with her to Walmart. She said if I went with her, she'd give me anything I wanted. Of course I'm gonna say yes, right? When you're that age, how old was I? Shit, I don't even remember. But at that age, of course, somebody says you can get anything you want, you're gonna take that offer up. And I'll never forget that it was a cold, rainy afternoon when we went. So when we get to Walmart, I go straight to electronics, and I told her I want that, and I pointed to the PlayStation. She goes, okay. See, back then the PlayStation was like $250, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe she's actually gonna get me a PlayStation. And then she was like, do you have any games for it? I was like, no, I don't. Obviously not, right? I never even dude, I've never even played a PlayStation before. She just told me to pick out 2 games. So I picked out Tomb Raider 2 and Resident Evil 2. And then I get home and I hook everything up. And I put in Tomb Raider 2. And the opening cinematic came on. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was like, this has got to be the best thing that I've ever seen in my entire life. I couldn't believe what I was doing. Dude, I've never seen anything like that, ever, in a video game. I was like, oh my gosh. And then the game started. And I didn't know how to play. See, I never played a 3D game before. Ever! And I was having a really hard time playing it. And then, I put in Resident Evil 2. Opening cinematic comes on. And I'm like, oh my god, dude. This is the most insane thing I've ever seen. Ever. And there's zombies, and I'm like, oh. And then the game started, and I didn't know how to play. Again, I was having a hard time with the controls, because I never played a game in 3D before. And all I could think at the time was, this is the scariest thing I've ever played. I was like, oh my god, this is scary. This is my first introduction to survival horror, whatever. So I skipped over the N64 when it came out. I never got one. I got one now. I got like 3 of them now, but at the time when they first were released, I never bothered picking an N64 up. I was a PlayStation guy at that point. Always loved the Nintendo, but at that point, I was like dedicated to the PlayStation. That was my console. I never had a Sega Genesis either. I've always wanted one. See, my grandparents are the ones that raised me, but they had money, but we didn't have that kind of money to spend on like gaming consoles. And believe me, I tried. I asked them, I was like, could you please get me a Sega Genesis? This was before the PlayStation came out, obviously. They were like, no, you got a Super Nintendo, you're not gonna get a Sega Genesis. And I never got one. Obviously, now I got one. Like, maybe I've had one for like 5 years now, but I never grew up playing the Sega Genesis. So anyway, PlayStation 2 came out, and I played it for the first time. I was like, dude, this is great. These graphics are great. It can't get any better than this. It can't. And then Xbox came out. And Xbox 360. And one of my favorite games of all time was Oblivion on the 360. I burnt out 2 360s playing that game. And then eventually PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 and now PlayStation 5, right? Always been a big fan, huge fan of Sony PlayStation since the beginning, since when they first released. But let me tell you something. I've gone back recently, like maybe a year and a half ago, to try playing Oblivion again on the 360. I can't do it, man. I can't do it. I'm already spoiled with Skyrim, right? At this point, I'm already spoiled with Skyrim and how good it looks. Going back and playing Oblivion, I can't do it. And then I tried going back and playing, Tomb Raider 2 and Resident Evil 2 on the original PlayStation, and I can't. I just can't. It's hard on the eyeballs. It really is. So, there's one thing though. One thing for sure. I can always go back to the Super Nintendo. No matter what. The games are always going to look gorgeous to me. To me anyways. The games are always going to look really good. The sound's going to sound really, really good. I don't know, man. It's like the games on Super Nintendo, they didn't get worse over time. It's like they got better. You know what I mean? Like they're still very, very playable. I still love the way they look, the way they sound. It's like they just aged like fine wine. So, to answer your question, what is my favorite gaming console of all time? It's definitely going to be the Super Nintendo. Always. Always. I think that's like the best console ever made. Hands down, no matter what. Well, PS5 is pretty damn good too. And I'm pretty sure the Xbox Series X is also. Even though I don't have one, I want one. I really do want an Xbox Series X. I want to play Starfield. But maybe later on, maybe later on during the year, I might pick one up. So we'll see how that goes. I got work to do here at the house first before I can buy any new gaming consoles. But yeah, to answer your question, the Super Nintendo, man, in my opinion, is the best console ever made. And I'm pretty sure there's people out there that are going to say no, it's the Sega Genesis, and that's fine. Just Sega Genesis is a good console too. It's a good console. But to me, Super Nintendo's the best. So there you go. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.